Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for waiting. I know we're starting a little bit late. We're just waiting for a few more people to join us. But it seems like we have a good crowd, so we'll just go ahead and get started. So welcome. You're attending Latinas Learn Standing Out to Amazon. There are going to be probably some people trickling in. So as we do that, we'd love for you to let us know who you are and where you're joining in from. We just always like to know what part of the country or state or city that you're joining in from. As I mentioned, this is Learn Standing Out to Amazon. So Amazon Jobs is a brand new sponsor of ours this year. So we're happy to have them as a sponsor. And this is actually our first event with them. So we're really excited to be able to bring this to you guys today, and for myself too, just to get more insight on how Amazon does their hiring and what they look for in their resumes and their interview style. So just a quick kind of rundown on today's agenda. So for those of you who have attended one of our events in the past, we kind of just briefly go over who Latina Geeks is, who we are, kind of meet the team behind today's event. And then we'll introduce our sponsor. They'll say a few words and kind of pass it on to the rest of the Amazon team who'll be bringing you the instruction today. As we mentioned, we're going to be going over resume review and interview tips. So just a little bit about Latina Geeks. Our mission here is to empower and inspire Latinas by sharing knowledge for you guys to get into the workforce and get into more tech roles specifically, in the workforce, and trying to encourage Latinas to upskill and just trying to be more of a resource for our community to get you into those positions, or if you're changing positions. Sorry, my computer. So just to be here as a resource for our community. Just a quick background. So we started actually in 2012. So Lala Castro and Tanya Salcido, they are actually the co-founders of Latina Geeks, which actually started off as a tech blog. It was more of a resource blog. And then they started doing kind of Google, similar to our webinars today. They started doing Google Hangouts. And then more officially in 2017, that's when they actually launched their first coding bootcamp, which actually sold out in 2 hours. And right after that, that's when they officially became, a 401(c)(3), it's a 5013 organization. So they became a nonprofit organization and started opening different chapters. So today, this is the San Diego chapter that's helping bring this event to today. And actually next year, we'll be celebrating our 10 years. So we're very excited about that. So stay tuned. We're actually going to be doing a very special, unique event next year to celebrate our 10 years. So keep an eye out for that. And just quickly to run through the team here, the San Diego chapter, we have Anna Reyes and myself. I'm Gabby Baker. We're currently co-presidents right now. And Susie Reyes also is also here behind the scenes helping out, is the vice president of our chapter. We're all searchable on LinkedIn if you ever want to connect with us, or you can find us on the website on latinageeks.org. And so now I'd just like to introduce our sponsor, Monica Witt from Amazon, so she can tell you more about Amazon.
Hello, everybody. I'm super excited to be a sponsor for Latina Geeks this year. I have brought a couple people with me that are going to do a quick presentation about the topics that Gabby spoke on. But first, I just kind of want to speak a little bit more about the little teeny sub-team that we actually are from. Amazon is a really big, wide company. And when I say our little tiny slice of the world, we actually have a very large team. It's called Customer Trust and Partner Support. So customer trust and partner support at Amazon is a team that focuses on creating a trustworthy shopping experience on Amazon.com. We protect customers. We are protecting brands. We're protecting our selling partners and also Amazon from fraud and abuse. And we also work on providing world-class support for people who are actually using our platform to sell. So protecting all of those Amazon selling partners. Our team encompasses a global scale. of machine learning scientists, software developers, product managers, associates, investigators. All of these people work together to help protect Amazon's mission across our Amazon.com platform. Now, the sub team that is here speaking to you today is our buyer fraud team. And so our buyer fraud team, as the name kind of relates to, it's helping our people on our platform basically prevent them from getting bad products. Again, making sure that they're not bad actors on our websites and they're not profiting from selling illegal materials or just fake products on our website. So what I want to do is I want to turn it over to Damien, Steph, and Purnima, who are from that team, who support that team. And they're going to tell you a little bit about, how they interview at Amazon, what they're looking for roles on their team. And then they're also going to do some plugs for some openings that they have on their team. So definitely want to shout that out for them. But Steph joins us as a senior program manager. Purnima is a software development manager, and then Damien is a client lead recruiter at Amazon. So we have the whole gamut of people here to speak with you, to help you kind of learn how to be successful. And then again, if you're interested, we'd love to talk to you further. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Damien to kick us off.
Thanks very much, Monica. Appreciate it. And thank you very much, everybody, for joining this evening, taking your time with us. We certainly appreciate it. And just to kick us off, I'd love to do a quick introduction of myself, and then invite Steph and Purnima to introduce themselves as well. And then we'll dive into a little bit on resume building, a little bit of LinkedIn optimization, and of course, interviewing at Amazon. So to start us off on our three introductions, as Monica mentioned, I'm a client lead recruiter for Amazon. I have been here for about 5 years now. I've worked with a number of verticals within Amazon, including Alexa, Fire TV, international exports and expansion, consumer payments, and now, of course, consumer trust and partner support. And over the course of that time, I've had an opportunity to see kind of behind the curtains how we work through interviewing at Amazon. So that's what I'm hoping to bring to you this evening. Steph, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks so much, Damien. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for taking time to chat with us today. My name is Steph Gamino. I am a senior program manager at Amazon. I live just outside of Seattle in a city called Issaquah. I love seeing all the local people here on the chat. So thanks so much for sharing where you're from. I started at Amazon, it'll be 9 years next month, which is just crazy. When Monica was going over and mentioning how we're a very small piece of the Amazon pie, it's actually funny because when I joined as an investigator, I was one of maybe like 20 investigators in our risk department, and we had maybe like 100 total globally, and now we're like in the thousands. So it's been super cool in the last 9 years to just see the growth across Amazon. So outside of work, I love reading. I have a fur baby. Her name is Loka. For those people who are on here that know her, she really is crazy. She unfortunately is not here, so you won't get to meet her. But I'm very much looking forward to just kind of walking everyone through how to stand out at Amazon. I have had the opportunity to do several hundred interviews throughout my career here at Amazon, so would love to be able to share those tips with everyone. Purnima, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
Thank you, Steph and Damien, for the good introduction. So hello, everyone. My name is Purnima Veeranna. So I am a SDM at Amazon. So I did join Amazon last year, of course, during COVID. So I did join virtually. And I was the first SDM to join in San Diego for the payment risk engineering team. So there were other teams in San Diego. So as part of payment risk engineering team, as Monica explained, it's a subset of buyer risk prevention team. So where we catch all the payment related frauds. So for every single order which goes through Amazon, irrespective of the dollar amount, it goes through fraud evaluation. So that's where my team comes into picture, what actions to take against customers and how we are going to do that. And we work with closely with the ML team and of course product program owners. And it's a lot of cohesive team structure where it's not like just one person. There will be a lot of people involved together to get any single product out of it. And a little bit about myself. So I did work majority of my career in aerospace industry. And I did from 1 year, I'm working on distributed systems. So I did hire a lot of people last year and still hiring a lot of people this year. We are expanding in San Diego and there are multiple open positions. And of course, we are getting a lot of new buildings and we will be expanding for more than like, I think 500 engineers in next few years. So we are hiring in San Diego. And I have a daughter who is in college now. She's studying junior. Of course, she's in engineering as well. Definitely not my influence, but that's what she decided. So not direct influence, probably indirect influence. So just one daughter, she's in college. So yeah, so pretty much a little bit about that, and probably we can talk about the slides now. Damien, over to you.
So touching on resume building, I want to clarify, there's a lot of different lenses through which people look at resumes, resume building. I, as a recruiter, even working in the same space that, Purnima and Steph work in, I'm going to have a different lens through which I look at it and advise on it. There's no just end all be all, this is how you put a resume together. Otherwise, I think we would have a universal instruction set for that. But so what I'm going to walk through is kind of the lenses through which I look at resumes and what is easiest for being able to catch a recruiter's attention. And then I'll invite some inputs from both Steph and Purnima. So what I suggest is keeping it simple. I want to address right off the bat, I've seen some articles come out recently about you should use graphics or bright colors, caricatures, things like that to capture attention. For Amazon and for recruiters here, it's actually not going to be super helpful. What we tend to gravitate to is being able to read right into the data and understand what you've been doing and where you've been working and understand the scope that you've been working at. So there's four main sections that you definitely want to have as part of your resume. Of course, you want to have kind of an off-the-cuff summary or objective statement where you clarify overall number of years that you've been working in a particular space, what your interest is, what your objective is. And to that end, sometimes you will end up having a couple different versions of your resume to be able to apply to different roles so that you can kind of cater your resume to the role that you're applying to. You absolutely want to have your experience broken out there. Always define the timelines that you worked somewhere. In the experience, that's where the meat of the data really comes in. I find a lot of folks tend to index on writing out what their responsibilities were for a role. But what's really interesting for us at Amazon is the impact you've had, not necessarily what you've done on a day-to-day. So it's almost like if you can bullet point KPIs, anecdotal feedback from customers based on something you did, almost kind of like reading out a very short data story in each one of those data points. That gives us an understanding of the scope of the work that you've been doing. And it gives us a sense of, okay, if you were to step into a role here at Amazon, here's how we tend to map out scope. And we kind of have a basis for being able to overlay that and say, okay, this is something that makes sense for this role or it doesn't. Without having those data points and just leaning in on, okay, here's the day-to-day responsibilities, it makes it difficult for us to do that. Some other things on experience, some people put the location of the job that they have have had in the past. I don't find that that's very important. Again, what we care about is the story of what you've been doing and the impact that you've been having. And of course, the education, you want to include that. As you're thinking about your experience, your education, and of course, achievements, What's important for recruiters is the searchability of resumes. So in your education, when you drop in your university that you went to or any certificates that you've gotten, always good to include the full name, as well as any abbreviations or any other ways that you might see it come up on the internet. That gives us the opportunity to use Boolean strings in our searches to be able to find you more easily. And then let's see here on key search terms. So an interesting little trick that you can do as you're building out your resumes is at the very bottom, or perhaps in a footer, you can actually throw in a number of search terms um, that are applicable to the role you want or applicable to the roles that you've been doing. And it can be, little snippets of technology you've worked with, responsibilities you've had, things like that. And then you can actually color the font white so it blends in with the page. And that way your resume looks really spot on, like on point and organized. But when I go and run a search in any sort of system, it's actually going to capture those words, and it's a great way to show up and still have a nice clean cut resume. So I want to throw it out there for Steph and Purnima. Anything that you want to add to resumes, anything that you look for?
Sure, I mean, you did cover pretty much all of it. The one just note I like to include is make it simple. Don't write pages of resume. Like, for example, if you have more years of experience, you don't have to write every single project you worked on. Write on the impactful work, what you have done. It should be like not more than 2 to 3 pages. Like 2 pages is preferred, not more than that. And there are a lot of questions asking about what extracurricular activities or achievements you have done, anything with impact of the community or a social network or anything you're passionate about, authentic to yourself, right? Like main thing I look as an hiring manager at the resume is what exactly I'm looking for from that person with respect to job roles and responsibilities and what kind of work you've done where I think you will be a right fit to the team. Like it should be both the way. So whether you fit to the team and whether the job description matches to your strengths, what you mentioned in the resume.
Mhm.
I think another thing to add too, I know a lot of my past experience as a hiring manager has been around looking for candidates with specific language skill sets. So especially we hire a lot for investigators where we need to have people with very diverse language skill sets and like kind of breaking down like, I am fluent in Spanish, like both written and writing or written and speaking. And so things like that are super helpful, but agree, Damien covered it really well. And then the addition of just like the extracurriculars, because we like to see, what else, do you do that brings value to your community? That's super helpful for us to look at.
Absolutely. And then I know there's a couple quick little questions coming up. And apologies, I might not see these as in the middle of conversation, but just to touch on these briefly, bachelor's degree or higher preferred, not necessary for all roles. We're actually, again, we're interested in the impacts that somebody has been able to have, not necessarily just, what degree they've paid for. So for us, it all comes back to, the scope and the impact. Now, on the other side, if what you're looking to get into is say like one of our campus roles, because you're just coming out of, a bachelor's program, a master's program, PhD, then definitely, you want to have those details in there, include your GPA. It can be helpful, but it's not going to make it or break it as far as being able to join Amazon. So there's a lot more than just the GPA, as Steph said. We want to see the achievements, the extracurriculars, what you're doing with your community, all the outside things. So if we could go to the next slide, it'd be great to dive into a little bit of LinkedIn optimization.
Damien, if I can, there was a
Mhm.
question that someone had asked about, would not having a summary objective statement hurt your chances of being considered for the role?
No, because again, if you can show for the experience and be able to speak for, what you've done and the impact you've had as a recruiter, I wouldn't really care about, how, whether you have an objective statement or not, or how long it is. And in fact, if you write anything, I would ask for like 1 or 2 sentences, because beyond that, I tend to gloss over a little bit because I see so many resumes.
Yeah. And I did just want to bring up how you mentioned like writing some keywords in your resume, but whiting them out. So I just put a note like essentially like SEO for your resume, right? So
Absolutely.
make it, put in those, just like if you're Googling something, making sure you're putting in those correct search terms. You're essentially looking up resumes in your guys's database. And so if you guys have those keywords in there hidden, it seems like that's a great, way to get your resume seen, which I had never thought of that. So I was like, I have to write that one down. I wrote that one down. Great tip. But sorry, go ahead and take it on to the next LinkedIn optimization.
Sure. So there's going to be 5 main sections to your LinkedIn. First is going to be your headline, or I guess there's probably going to be some questions that come up about the picture that you put in LinkedIn. Make it professional. It doesn't have to be, over the top, like headshots, type of situation. We don't really track for, what anybody looks like or what somebody is showing up with as a picture in LinkedIn. Again, it's Amazon. What we care about is the impact that you've been able to have. So, headline, that's actually going to be a little bit more important. You want to put in, um, again, you can do some interesting SEO optimization kind of things in your LinkedIn profile. So, one thing you can put in your headline is open for opportunities. So, something that a recruiter might put in is open or looking or something like that. Um, and then in the about section, interesting thing of that is if any of you are looking at your LinkedIn profile right now, you'll notice with the about section that it initially compresses to only show about the first 2 to 3 sentences that you put in. And beyond that, you actually have to click on the about section to get it to expand so that you can see whatever else is in there. And you can essentially think of that as a point of friction, in that less people are going to click as opposed to more. And so anything you would put in there from a recruiting lens, because I see so many resumes, so many LinkedIn profiles on a daily basis, keep it to 2 to 3 sentences, because the likelihood that I will click into that as opposed to going straight to your experience, which is what's really interesting to me, is minimal. In the experience, that's where you can get a solid paragraph in before it will again compress so that you have to click in to see more. In that paragraph, you want to be very concise, very pointed, technologies you've worked with, impact that you've had. I would definitely bullet point like, 3 big points of impact that you've had and bring any metrics or results to the table that you can. On skills, that section again is going to be very helpful for the SEO piece. So definitely, search through there, tag all the skills that you can. The more that you tag, the easier it is for us to find you. And then the same thing on interests. For the interest, it's good to tag a lot of different companies, because on our side, when we run searches for candidates in LinkedIn, on one side, you can go and filter for a specific company. But sometimes recruiters will also, instead of just using that filter, will include a company name in one of our just, key search words, in which case it'll still pull that if it's an interest to you, not necessarily that you've worked there. So interesting little tidbit there. And I'm going to kick it over to Steph and Purnima for any additional comments that they have or anything that they looked at in LinkedIn.
Thank you, Damien. So thank you for covering it so well. Very useful tips. So I just like to share my experience here. Actually, I was not actively looking for any job opportunities last year. So, but I did kept my LinkedIn profile up to date. And I don't remember whether I marked it as open for opportunities or not, but I was really happy with my previous job and I was not looking for any changes. But the recruiter did reach out to me and said, "Hey, are you interested to join Amazon?" And I had a pretty long commute in my previous job. So this one was very close to my home. I said, "Oh, okay, why not? Why not to give it a try? Let me, at least it's an experience." So I did try and I'm here today. Uh, so I did not even update my resume, to be frank. So the LinkedIn profile, I kept it up to date. So it's a little bit very important to keep your LinkedIn profile up to date. As an hiring manager, I do sometimes go through the LinkedIn profiles to see is there any suitable candidate. And Damien covered well because we do use filters there's so many profiles in LinkedIn. So to stand out, ensure that your skills are up to date, what you know, and then of course experience and your education and mainly the about and deadline, because when you start searching, only you see those 2 3 lines, you won't be able to go read the entire profile. And if those 2 to 3 lines looks interesting, then you go read the profile further. So I just thought of sharing that little bit of my story for your experience there. Yeah.
I think that's a great story, Purnima. I've heard a lot of those stories where people have said, I wasn't actively looking and I either came across something that someone posted on LinkedIn or I was recruited by someone. I know I do a lot of outreach and I really leverage it as a tool for networking. So I treat it very differently, obviously, than like my Instagram or like other social medias where I use this as a way of posting articles or like different work that my team has done. And, you leverage like the different hashtags in there to be able to just get a bigger reach. So before I was actively hiring for a role I have right now, I was posting a lot of information and that way, because I knew I was going to be expanding my team in different countries. And so I was able to, kind of expand my network there and to have a conversation with people. So I would also say don't be afraid to reach out to people. If we're posting things and making it public, like it's okay to reach out to us. And so I know I've had a lot of great candidates that have come through the pipeline that I've met through LinkedIn, and we've been able to find great positions for them. So definitely keeping your LinkedIn up to date. I think my LinkedIn is actually more up to date than my paper resume right now. And yeah, I think it's just such a great tool to be able to leverage.
And Damien, we have a few questions in there if you're able to
Yep,
get
I was
to
just
some of those.
reading through a few. There's some good questions coming out of this. I love it. So first one that I caught was just on being a stay-at-home mom and getting back to work. Amazon actually has we have a return ship program or a back to work program, obviously. And so again, the search engine optimization that you can do for your LinkedIn, for your um, resume, add in there returning to work or return to work, back to work, uh, you know, took a break or in LinkedIn, you can actually put in a list for the experience of, having been a stay-at-home mom. And again, stay-at-home mom is something that we'll occasionally go and run a search for to see if there's anybody who might be looking to return back. So definitely add that in there because we do want to see folks come back into, the work environment and be able to um, uh, you know, diversify the thoughts and experience that we're bringing into our teams. It's not just that you have to have been working up until the day that we talk. And then cover letters. Unless you're looking at like a VP or director role, I would not worry about a cover letter, at least for Amazon. Um, For recruiters, many times we won't be taking the time to go through and read that. We want to see the experience and just impact through it, what you show there. Maybe some hiring managers might feel a little differently about it, but for the most part, just to get initially through the door, a cover letter is not going to make a huge difference. About adding images or graphic design. So if you're looking into a design role, this is one caveat for what I mentioned about, like, bright colors, doing some interesting work with your resume, things like that. It can be helpful for those design type roles to do something like that. Absolutely, you want to have your portfolio available, especially in LinkedIn. I can tell you that the recruiters that do specialize in design roles, if you send them a resume, or they come across one, again, what they're going to come across is the text in the resume. And what they'll go and do is look at your LinkedIn profile and get a sense of who you are and the work you've done from that. Let's see here. Endorsements on LinkedIn don't play a huge role for us. Sometimes what can be helpful is maybe what somebody says in there might play into, again, optimizing a search, but we don't necessarily go looking for, should we hire somebody because they have, 10, 50, 100 endorsements in LinkedIn. Let's see, how often should we post updates? I think Purnima covered that. Any other questions that you're catching, Gabby, that might be good to cover?
I would say there's a question here. It says, as recruiters, what do you think what do all of you think? Do you recommend the hashtag open to work on your picture? And there was actually an earlier question is how do you let recruiters know that you're open for work while you still have a job without letting your employer know that you're looking, right?
So you're 100% right. You don't necessarily want to cue in your current boss that you are open and looking. So again, what I would suggest is, on the settings side of LinkedIn, make sure that what comes across there is that you're open and not necessarily that it's, in that picture section, because that makes a difference for whether or not we can actually send you an in-mail. If you have in that setting section that you're not open, like, we literally can't send an in-mail. The only thing we could do is actually send you not an in-mail, but a mail directly if we're a connection of yours. So make sure that that setting is on for open.
Oh, got it. There, I think, Anna, you're talking about there's a setting we can say open to
Mhm.
recruiters only, but it doesn't actually publicly display it on your LinkedIn profile so that
Yeah.
they can still be searched by recruiters. Okay.
Yep.
And let me see if there's anything else on here.
There was one question for me that I wanted to address. So Karen asked if we recommend taking program manager certification courses. So full transparency, I don't have a program management background on paper. I learned it all on the go. So the cool thing about Amazon is that we like to, and we'll dig into this more when we talk about the interview process. Like, if we see that you have skill sets that are easy to be coached and to grow into other areas, that's what we love to focus on. So I started as an investigator and just kind of had the opportunity to grow into program management. You definitely learn great things from those courses. I've taken a few of them, but I'm not like certified. I don't have like my PMP, for example. So they're always great to have, but definitely not a requirement, at least for the majority of the program manager roles that we have interviewed for.
And I did, if we don't get to everyone's questions right now as Damien, Steph, and Purnima are presenting, there is going to be a Q&A at the end so that we can try to tackle some of those questions, but still keep, asking questions in the chat so we can just keep this as a dialogue as possible. Unless there's another question that you saw, Damien, that you wanted to speak to, or Steph in there.
There's one that I did catch, just very recently about, is recruiting done exclusively through LinkedIn? Answer to that is no. So we have, of course, this is Amazon. We've got a lot of tools at our disposal, and recruiters are clever. So interesting thing is there's a lot of recruiters at Amazon, and we can sometimes be our own biggest competition because we're such a huge company. And so we'll go outside of LinkedIn, knowing that a lot of recruiters within Amazon will, maybe index more on LinkedIn, and we'll go and search out, other means of being able to find talent in different places, and continue to try and diversify the teams that we have here, because it's such an important priority for our hiring. So definitely think in terms of just posting your resume online, posting your resume, like applying to LinkedIn. We have our own internal ATS where we kind of keep a whole host of resumes, and we'll go and search through there every once in a while. So I come across people all the time that maybe applied 6, 8, 9 years ago, and I pick up on them now here in 2021 for a role, and it can sometimes be completely different than what they initially applied for, but it aligns now. So definitely think about some different ways that you can get your resume and your information out there for us to find. It's all about
And
searchability.
And on that note, I'll do a little plug for Latina Geeks job board. So we'll drop a link in later on during this event on how you can upload your resume to our job board, which Amazon here has access to. So just wanted to give that little plug in as another way to get your resume out there.
Awesome. Cool. Can we go to the next slide? So at Amazon, we have, for a lot of roles, we'll use assessments as kind of a first step in process. And we have a number of different types of assessments, and it's very specific to the roles that we're talking about. So we have a lot of them in process. And of course, the objective of this is, as kind of a first step in process, and hopefully a very quick one, so that we can go right into on-sites without, wasting a whole lot of time with back and forth scheduling and things like that, prolonging the hiring cycle. The objective for us is we want to shorten the time span that it takes for you to get through any processes with us. And then, of course, once you get into Amazon, you get to spend your time working for Amazon and interviewing for on-sites, as opposed to, half your day job going to doing phone interviews, right? So I'm going to let Purnima dive into technical assessments. Do you want to pick up on that?
Sure. Thank you, Damien. So for any SDE job or even for any ML scientist job, so there's a compulsory online coding assessment question. So there will be a couple of questions in the coding. Like say, for example, there is an array of integers. It can be positive or negative integers, and come up with a number of combinations, write a code, any language you prefer, either Java, Python, C++, C. So any preferred language, come up with two subgroups of array where the left side number is always greater than the right side group. Say, for example, like 10 to 8 or 10 to 6. You say 10 one side, 2 on 6, and then 10 and 8, 2 on the other side. Something like the combinations. It's not that you're giving the combinations, you're writing the code such a way it produces all such type of combinations. Very similar questions like that. There's a lot of like parking lot questions. So on the coding assessment, the main thing is you have to complete the coding in such a way that you do some exceptions properly, and there are test cases. So your coding has to pass the test cases. Majority of this coding assessment, we have like a robots which auto-corrects all of this and gives a score. So for some of the coding assessment, as a hiring manager, sometimes we go look into the coding assessment and see whether there are minor things the person missed. So you don't have to get like 100%, but at least there's a score which you have to pass. So you should be very well versed with that. And then it comes with a timing. So it's not like it's open-ended, you can answer anytime. Once you log in and start the coding question, it starts the timer starts kicking in, and then you have to complete the 2 coding questions with the test cases pass. Not like as I said, you should not, it's not that you should score at 100%, the passing score is good. At least if you get all the test cases right. And even in the test cases, you will be having like easy test cases, simple test cases, medium complexity test cases, high complexity test cases. So you have to ensure that when you write the code, you're considering all those, and your test cases covers that part of the coding. So there will be at least two coding questions. At least you have to complete one completely, and you have to write the approach. So the actual coding carries more score than the approach, but still you have to write an approach. As soon as you saw the coding question, what did you think about? How are you trying to do this? And what is your approach to follow? Like either you're using hash map or hashtag or array or binary method, and why you're using one versus the other. So if you can write those logistics, the reason I picked up this coding is because it's time complexity is better than the other approach, something like that. So if you can write and complete the assessment, so that will be the next step for the online interviews. Thank you, Damien. And with that, probably I will ask Steph to talk about the written assessment.
Yep. So written assessments is another part of the assessments that we do, especially for program and product managements. So we write a lot at Amazon. I remember when I first joined, I was told that, and I kind of laughed. I was like, "There's no way you're gonna write more than I did in college," and I was wrong. But it's actually a super cool exercise to kind of come with that skill set already, because almost every single meeting that we attend, we actually start with a written document. It's very rare that we have PowerPoint presentations. All of them will be what we call a 1-pager or a 6-pager, and it'll really help us kind of set the tone for the meetings. So when you get through this process and you're asked to submit a writing sample, there is a topic that's provided. What I'm not sure on is how frequently they change, but there is a topic on there, and you're given specific guidelines on how to, kind of write out your scenario. So it may be a question like, give us an example of a recent project that you led, and then, explain like the different layers of it. What I would recommend, the biggest thing is to make sure that you understand the question that's being asked, and avoid fluff language. So that's one of the things that I feel like we see most in a lot of these writing samples that we get. We have a lot of people that will say like, "Oh, my team and I launched this new payment product and we made like tremendous impact." Tremendous is the fluff word in there. It's like, use data. We're a huge data-driven company. So wherever you can pull in like the true impact statement and the numbers, that'll really come to light. Because again, like that fluff language isn't really going to give us a whole lot of information. And we like to see that, people are able to really kind of incorporate that information into their narrative. And so I think a lot of times too is make sure that you're telling a story, but build your narrative in a way that's easy to understand. So if you're used to using a lot of acronyms, I know Amazon, we throw acronyms around left and right. Make sure that you spell them out and make sure that it's something that's like easily understood, so that the reader who maybe doesn't work at Microsoft or doesn't have exposure to your project at Expedia or whatever company it may be, help us really understand, the story of like what the initiative was that you were driving. Make sure another big thing too is avoid disclosing anything that's confidential or anything that may require a non-disclosure agreement. There are times where I know a lot, especially hiring and like compliance roles or risk roles, people are super excited about, these new controls that they added, but it may be a little bit too much detail that's getting overshared. And take time to read over your writing sample as well. Get a second pair of eyes. I mean, we don't want you to like overthink it, but it is helpful sometimes to get feedback from someone, because if, like if I were to have my document read by my mom, she's not necessarily going to understand all the intricacies, and that will help me actually figure out like, okay, here's where I need to explain the situation a little bit better with stronger examples. And so again, like just biggest thing is like, make sure you understand the question that's being asked in the writing sample, because I think that's what I see the most, where a completely different question gets explained. And so we have to kind of go back and chat through the during the actual interview to make sure that we get the right question addressed. So those are the big things. Again, we write a lot at Amazon. And so this is really a helpful exercise that allows us to kind of gauge the different writing styles and then see if it's something that's going to require coaching. We provide the mechanisms for that based on, the outcome of the interview. But we definitely do write a lot, and that's why that written assessment is super critical for us.
We did have a few questions in the chat about the interview process. Damien was able to answer a couple of those. Thank you, Damien. Somebody did ask, is there a way to prepare for the technical assessment?
Yes, so there are a lot of coding related books. So you should be really like whichever language you're comfortable with. So you don't have to learn a new language, but at least you should know what are the methodologies that are exist in the language, and time complexity, and we should know what to use when, like binary search versus a linear search, and you should be aware when to use what. So like weighing in, not just doing the coding, right? Like it should not be like a brutal coding. So when you do a coding, it has to be, if you don't know anything, probably that is the last option, I say, at least to complete the coding. But better way is to find efficient ways. And for those, there are several coding books. Sometimes like I've done interview for the people who haven't completed the bachelor's degree, but they're so excellent in coding because they have learned on their own, because they're passionate about that. So, and they do excellent coding, and that tells, especially when you're writing the coding, how do you ensure the test cases passes is also a one key critical, because you don't want to just do the coding and get that out. So ensure, when before you take any online assessment, ensure you understand what exactly the coding, what are the methodologies that exist in the programming language that you are proficient with, and the time complexity, and also ensure that, that how to write test cases and how to ensure the test cases are passed, and what are all the exceptional right test cases. Like it's not just like the obvious ones. So you have to prepare and you have to practice. So practice is the key here, right? Like you cannot just read the book and understand. Open a terminal, start coding, practicing on your own, and there are plenty of good coding books.
And there was a question about also the writing part, but I think this would also apply to the technical. Is there they're asking how much time is given to answer? I guess is this a timed test, the technical and the written assessment?
Yes. I think both do have a timing restriction there, but for coding assessment, I think it's 1.5 hours, maybe 2 hours. Damien, do you remember if it is changed now?
I think it was an hour and a half and just got moved to closer to 2 hours, at least for the coding assessment for like software development engineers.
Yeah.
I think that's the only one that got extended out like that. For any other roles, they weren't impacted by that adjustment.
And is there one for the written one? Yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say the writing one, I don't know exactly how long, but it's like, I think it's working backwards from like the date that we're gonna like schedule the interview, right? I think it's like a few days that someone has to provide the writing sample.
Okay.
I don't know for sure. I just know because I just had someone that we moved on for an on-site, and the clock started ticking, but I don't know how much time they have. I just know it has to be completed before the actual interview.
Yeah, we usually send it out once the interview is confirmed. So once we've got it all scheduled and a date squared away with the recruiting coordinator. And then the ask is, of course, that it's completed by the night before the interview. That way we get a chance to, take a quick look at it in the morning. And if you can get it done sooner, great. It's going to lead to better conversation over the course of your interviewer, because everybody's had a time to actually take a look through the content.
And I do like to point out for SDE interviews,
Mhm.
you will have technical assessment like coding assessment, but may not be written assessment. Written assessment is mainly for program, product, and leadership positions where written assessment is mandatory. But for technical assessment, mainly the coding assessment is the mandatory one. And there was a question, how many levels of interviews are there? So it's like, yeah, you do resume review. That's not an interview, but once your resume passes, of course, you will have, if you're in technical role, you will have a coding assessment. And once you clear coding assessment, I know Damien has slides for that, we will have a phone screen. And after the phone screen, then it's an on-site interview. So those are the steps. So I think we have a slides to talk about that as well.
And I want to ask, just kind of plug it in, that there were a couple questions about like open roles and like remote roles. So I'm not sure if you guys will touch on that later. If not, we can bring those up during Q&A.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is save that for the Q&A time. And then just tracking for time in general, I want to make sure that there's plenty for us to dive
Sure.
into Q&A and everything. So if we could maybe just crunch quickly through the interview prep details, because that's going to be a pretty meaty chunk. I
Okay.
definitely suggest taking some notes over the course of that.
Okay.
Right. So the phone interviews here. So this is the first step after the resume has been passed along from the hiring manager back to the recruiter saying, you know, hey, we're interested in chatting with this person. What I like to tell candidates is that this process is, the phone screen is, or phone interview is a little bit more casual, but that doesn't mean that we don't want data and detail in your example. So think of this as kind of your practice run for the actual on-site or now kind of virtual interviews. We are usually not on camera. These are done through Chime or through the phone, but it's a great time for us to get to kind of hear some of your biggest accomplishments. So we do ask behavior-based questions as well as functional. These will vary depending on the role that you're interviewing for, specifically for roles like that I've hired for program and product investigators. You know, this is my opportunity to not only tell you as a candidate about how my team is organized, the team dynamic, my leadership style, but then I really focus my questions around the core functional skill sets that I'm looking for. The leadership principle-based questions, absolutely a part of this process. So make sure that you're taking some time to kind of understand them a little bit more. I'll talk a bit more in a few slides about those in a little bit more detail. But try your best to diversify your examples. So if it's something that you're preparing for the phone screen, I mean, if it's a super strong example, you can maybe recycle it for when we push you to the on-site, but try as much as possible to kind of diversify to show, you know, your team management, if you've done it, like what's something that you were specifically an owner of, what's something where you collaborated with a team on, and really bring the data and the impact into those examples. So in the interest of time, I'll kind of trim my phone screen overview. We can go to the next slide. Amazon leadership principles. So these are super critical for us. Like you'll hear us, you probably have mentioned us just kind of organically slip it into our conversations here. We are looking for people to have a good understanding of those leadership principles. They're not super difficult ones. And honestly, as you start to kind of dive through them a little bit more, you realize like, oh, these are times when I have been an owner, when I have been super proactive and demonstrated bias for action, you know, when I've had to kind of push back and insist on high standards for a new launch that I'm working on supporting. One of my past managers would always tell us stories about how like he taught his young daughters like super young to like really embrace those leadership principles. So it shows that this is something, you know, for everybody that can organically be adapted. Make sure that that's something that comes to light. So as you're preparing your examples with, you know, strong data points, no fluff language in those examples. As you're preparing those, ask yourself the question of like, what leadership principle does this tie back to? I bet that as you're structuring your examples, it's probably time back to multiple ones, but take the time to like really think back to it and try and find those examples that exemplify multiple leadership principles in one. I think the biggest thing is like, you know, what we don't want you to do is spend, you know, the hour that you have with us just listing it and saying, I'm an owner, I demonstrate, you know, bias for action. Like actually show us through your example how you have done that. And I think that's something that really stands out to us. So I challenge you guys as you're preparing for those interviews, you know, to look through the leadership principles. There's also some really good books, Working Backwards and The Amazon Way, that kind of go into them a little bit deeper. So you can use those as good kind of examples. We can move on to the next slide for on-sites.
You mind if I actually drop just a quick note on the leadership principles? So interesting thing, just to carry it a little bit further, the degree to which they sink into just our day-to-day interactions is actually quite interesting and amazing at Amazon. I can literally go into any meeting and hear those leadership principles dropped by VPs and directors as reasons for making any given decision. And the cool thing is it actually ties around globally. So I can sit in a meeting with people from all across the globe and one of us reference one of those leadership principles and we know exactly why we're making that decision, exactly why we're using that lens for driving conversation. So.
No, thank you for adding that. I had a little blurb about that as well, that I've had the opportunity to like work in so many different sites across the globe for Amazon. And that is honestly the coolest thing. A lot of times when I bring this up, people kind of roll their eyes and they're like, okay, you've drank the Amazon Kool-Aid too long, but it's true. It's like, and you're proud of it too. Like you have that pride of being an Amazonian and holding those standards, and it comes to light in your conversations. Like people that don't work at Amazon and are my friends outside of it, like they see that pop up. So, and it's a cool thing. And I'm sure, you know, other companies that people work with have different types of, you know, principles, but these are just so like, we're just very, very proud of them. So I love that. And those two books that are pasted in the chat are really good ones. Okay, perfect. So on sites. So this is and right now I'm pretty sure most of the interviews what normally is an on-site, we're doing them virtually right now just due to the pandemic, but this is after your phone screens. Keep in mind, some teams do require 2 phone screens. So it'll kind of depend, but recruiting does communicate that ahead. But once you are moved on to the on-site or virtual interview phase, this is your opportunity where you're not only going to be having a conversation with the hiring manager, but also it's a total of 5 different interviewers, and you'll have between 45 minutes to an hour, with each of those individuals. You'll have breaks in there as well, but similar to the phone screen information that I mentioned, like this is now your time where you're going to have multiple different people who are really going to be you know, digging into your examples and asking a lot of follow-up questions. So come prepared with examples that you're not only really proud of, because those are the ones where we can see that passion. Like there's nothing I love more when I'm interviewing someone, when I can see, you know, the twinkle in your eye when you're like, this is something I was so proud of doing. And so think about recent examples, preferably, and you know, come up with a handful of them, like 8 to 10 different situations. Like I said in the past, you know, ask yourself as you're preparing them, what leadership principles do these tie back to? Because we will be incorporating the leadership principles into our questions. Like we're not going to say, well, tell me about a time when you showed ownership. You know, we have a different way of asking those, but if you're familiar with the leadership principles, that's kind of your way of knowing, here's a great example for me to showcase. Another thing too that I think sometimes people forget is, if you're interviewing like for a program manager role, I want to hear about your mechanisms that you've established over time. What are the goals? What are the different launches that you've supported? Were these launches that you came up with? Like, did you have that think big idea and decided to like drive that innovation? Or was this something that was assigned to you? Neither of those are bad things, but we do like to see that balance of, here's a great idea that I had that I was able to drive and execute. And then here's one that I was asked to do and I supported as a part of a team. Something that a lot of people forget. And if I notice that I'm only hearing success stories, I actually will intentionally start asking, like, okay, that's great. Tell me about a time that you failed. And it always catches people off guard. And I'm not doing it to stump you. And I'm probably not the only one, but we are human and we make mistakes. And Amazon prides themselves on taking calculated risks. So think about maybe those examples where you're like, hey, I had this great idea. I mapped it out. I got the resourcing and the funding, and then it ended up being a total flop. Like, that's okay. The biggest thing is that we are using that question to try and assess, like, how did you bounce back from that? What were your learnings? How were you receptive to feedback? Those are totally fine. I think a lot of times people have the assumption that we only want to hear your wins. Your learnings and your opportunities are also stuff that we take into account. So next slide, please.
Yes. So on the on-site interviews, typically for the technical round, there will be four rounds, 4 different people asking questions about 4 different situations. Like both every single round, as Steph mentioned, it includes a technical component and also leadership component. So when you're answering the question, especially when we ask, I explain about the situation, what you did, or like a what kind of metrics or tool did you build for a team, anything like that, you should be, as Steph mentioned, we like to see that passionate, what you did, right? Like what you did in your team. And even if it was a part of a project someone asked you to do, but how you embraced that idea and where it was started and where you took, and explain in the STAR situation, like star methodology, like what exactly is the situation and what was the task and what was the action and what is the result, right? Like start with that. So it's easy to follow, because you might have worked on a project which you are very well aware of, but now when we are understanding what you have worked on, if you follow this methodology, it's easy for an interviewer to grasp, yeah, okay, this was the situation and this is what exactly the task you were trying to do, and what was the actions. It's not like you have to do individually. It may be teamwork, or you're part of a team, what exactly you did and what was the outcome. As Steph said, again, the outcome is not always it should be success, right? Like even if it is a failure, this is what happened and what exactly you learned from that failure, right? Like as human, all of us do make mistakes. This is what I learned. So keep that flow, so that we will be having an hour. And as an interviewer, of course, we like to hire as many candidates as we can. So we are there to help and collect all the data points to make a valid, right decision about that candidate. So during the interview, if you keep this methodology, it's easy for an interviewer to collect as many data points. But if you are babbling and if you're talking multiple things not in a structured way, then as an interviewer, I should be ending up asking more and more questions to understand it better, which consumes more time and there will be less data points. As long as we have a good valid data points, we can make a strong right decision. But if there are no valid data points, understanding, then definitely it's like if the interviewer tried to collect as much as data points, but without data points, we cannot make a hiring decision there. So whenever during the interview, keep that time in mind and keep that note that an interviewer is trying to collect as much of data points and try to speak to that data in a STAR methodology, which helps like, okay, I understood the situation. This is what the outcome to the flow. So remember that and be prepared. And also, as there was a slide like I think Damien put together, go past. It's not that you have to explain a scenario just from past 1 year, past couple of years, right? Like depending on your experience in the industry. So what you have done, so keep all those examples prior to the interview in mind, what I did, and practice what is the situation, what is the task, action, result. And once the interviewing start about that, you pick up an example, the interviewers start digging more and more specific to that example. Like the questions will be related to the same example. Hey, what did you do? What was the situation? What it is? So you should remember that. Hey, what exactly you did. So if you say, I forgot now, so then again, we cannot go back to switch to another example. So when you're picking up a specific example, remember everything, what you did as part of that example And when the interviewer digs deeper, so you should be knowing as a team or as an individual, what exactly actions that you took there. Okay, and the interviewing is two-way, right? It's not just one way. It's like question and answers. It's like a communication channel. So it's like we are working together there, like interviewer and interview, asking questions. So keep that communication constant. If you don't know, if you don't understand the question, ask clarifying questions. Don't be shy. Understand the question better instead of just starting answering a different way and then losing time and interviewer have to interrupt and then come back. So instead of that, if you do not understand the question, be bold and ask the question, hey, I did not understand this. Can you please explain a little bit more detail? And then they can provide example. Hey, this is what I'm asking for, so that then you can get into the right point there. And so high level details, yeah, so you should be able to convey the high level details, but again, as I said there, we won't just stop at the high level details. Definitely as an interviewer, we will dive deep to understand the scenario situation. So please be prepared to answer all the follow-up questions with the example you are going to talk about it. So whenever you're picking up example, that's the right thing to pick up a right example which has a right meat in it, so that the interviewer can go dive deep asking questions, or not like, oh, I did this, after that what happened, okay, I don't know further things, so I don't remember. Don't say that. So pick up the right example there and be specific. I versus we, right? Like as an interviewer, when I'm doing an interview, I see, hey, whether you're asked to do this work as a team, you did, as an individual, what you did. Mainly, as an interviewer, I will be focusing mainly on what you did, right? Okay, there's a team, you achieved a common project goal or a common team goal, but what was your main contribution towards that, achieving that goal? That's what I will be looking mainly. What you did, was it your idea? Okay, if it's not your idea, team idea, okay, even picking up the team idea is a good, but what exactly your contribution to that idea, what you did in that project? So keep that we and I very specific, what you did versus we did is like, okay, there are 4 or 5 people did together, but what exactly your contribution is main thing, what as an interviewer we will be looking there. And impact, what you cost to the team or to the project or to the product you're working on. So next slide, please. So on the technical interviewing, so there will be like 4 different rounds, as I said, like problem solving. So we will ask you a coding question, I solve this problem for us. And then like data structures, we'll ask you a coding question where you have to use the data structures to solve the problem. So there will be like a live link where you have to actually go write the code. We won't be like as an online coding assessment, we won't be running that code and seeing whether it passes or not. So I'm not, as an interviewer, I will not be looking for the perfect code which I just take and works. I'm looking mainly into the logic during the online interview. But during the online coding assessment, yes, that code runs and the test cases have to pass. But during the on-site interview, I will be mainly looking into whenever I ask a coding question, don't just jump to a solution right away. So understand the question and say, hey, this question, of course, any single question or any single problem will not be having a single solution. There will be various ways to approach that any problem. So you can explain if there are this approach or I can do this approach, and whichever the approach you're picking up, explain why. Why are you picking up this approach versus the other? And then ask questions. Hey, like for example, I ask you a system design question. Hey, design so-and-so system which carries 100 products and which is a parking lot, or which is where you have to run a batch script every night at so-and-so time and thousands of computers. Any system design question, ask clarifying questions. Hey, whether it's a read-oriented system or a heavily write-oriented system, what kind of data you're looking, is it like is it a huge data, or I can use a relational database versus SQL or non-SQL databases? And also, if you're comfortable with SQL database, you explain I'm using the SQL database for so and so reason, right? And you can do it in approach, but I'm choosing this because I'm very proficient in this methodology. That is fine too. But explain why though. So that's what we're looking for whenever you pick up any other approaches. And also like majority of the system design questions, it's not like, yeah, you solve it and you ask it. It should be interactive. Hey, how many users are you expecting, right? Like, is it 10 users? If it's 10 users, the design can go in a different way. If it is 1,000 users, it can go in a different way. So then the interviewer might say, oh, today maybe 100 users, tomorrow it will be 1,000. Then you have to keep the scalability in mind. Microservices versus it's a horizontal system or vertical system. So whenever you're designing the system, mainly as an interviewer, I look is, are you asking the right question to come up with the right design, like scalability, latency, whether it has a very time restriction and availability, right? Like the data has to be, for some systems, the data doesn't have to be always up to date. For some of them, yes. So understand the question, understand the system design question, and ask clarifying question. What kind of system are we looking for? What kind of problem are you trying to solve for? And explain. And as you design, there will be more and more questions because you go one step forward. So this is my eye level design, but then you will be having more clarifying questions. So feel comfortable. And as an interviewer, some majority of the times I will be giving hints as well. I will be asking questions, say, why are you doing this? Why not this? So try to follow that hint. Even in the coding questions like problem solving or data structures, as an interviewer, we really want you to get that work done. So we will be giving you hints as well. So pay attention for those hints, because if you're not taking the hints, it looks like you're not taking the feedback, what we're providing, right? Like you should be able to take the hint. And it's not that you have to agree with the hint. So if you're not agreeing with that, you can explain why. So yeah, I hear you, you're suggesting this, but for this approach, I feel this is the right way. That's good too, because you are believing in yourself, in what way you like to do, but you're explaining why. So that's really important too. So just pay attention if they are giving the hints, try to take hints. If not, explain why. So and as I said, it's a time like an hour interview. So in that time, mainly like we like to get as much as data points and try to solve the problem within that hour. So if you are unable to, even for system design, we have a link where you can write. It's not very user friendly though, but you have to use mouse to write all the boxes and do a system design. But as an interviewer, I'm not looking for perfect. If you write like database, I am not looking for a database picture that you can write a box and you can say, this is my database. That's good, because I'm not looking into how it appear. I'm looking into what are your thinking process, what exactly you're thinking and what kind of questions you're asking and how you're keeping latency, scalability, and availability in mind. So those are the things mainly we focus, not how it appear or how it look. So yeah, pretty much. So we covered online coding assessment, written assessment, phone screen, and the virtual round. Right now it's virtual round, but before COVID it was all on site, 4 rounds of interviews. One thing I like to tell is if there are 4 rounds, so if you did good in one round and you did not do good in another round, that doesn't define the criteria of selection, because we will be having a debrief and we'll be talking about candidate strengths and the leadership principle sides, and also on the technical side, coding, system design, and of course, for Steph on the programmatical sides. So we look into all those combinations, not just one or the other. And if a candidate has some improvements in this area versus this area, or is easily coachable, we look whether the candidate is easily coachable. Okay, they did not get this problem, but is it easily coachable based on my conversation with them? Yes, let's hire the candidate because we can easily coach and train them. And also say, for example, if you're applying for SDE position, but you have strong programmatical skills. So then we say, oh, this person probably better fit there. So it's not that we will be directly, oh, you applied for this position, or you applied for SDE2, but our SDE3, you did not get selected there. But we will see which position is suitable based on your interview round as well. So when you do all the 4 rounds, keep that in mind. If you did not do one round good, that's fine, because we during debrief, we will see where exactly the candidate fits in, your strengths, and easily coachable, of course. And then if not this position, what other position the candidate fits. Like for an SGM position, we interview sometimes, but they're better fit for TPM. We offer that position as well if a candidate is willing to take.
Thank you. I think that's the end, right, Damien, for your guys' presentation?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we have not much time left, but we do want to open it up for a few questions if anybody wants to raise their hand and unmute and ask a question, or if you prefer to drop it in the chat, let us know if you want to ask any of the Amazon team a question.
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to say a quick thank you so much for this amazing presentation. Admittedly, it couldn't have come at a better time for me because I just started this process, not for the technical side, but definitely very, very helpful to kind of just get a rundown of things that the recruiter has already spoken to me about. So very, very great. So thank you, Latina Geeks and Amazon for doing this. Just a quick question. You guys obviously touched on a lot of really great information. So my question to you, obviously you all, were successful in your interviews with Amazon. If you could tell yourself anything, when you were going through the process, like what piece of advice would you give yourself that you wish you would have known, after you got the role?
I'll go first. I think for me, it was, and I've said it like 10 times on here, it's the data part. When I first interviewed, I was like pretty fresh out of college. I graduated with a degree in justice studies. So like I knew about risk, but I didn't have any hands-on experience. I had been managing a local coffee shop. And so I remember one of the interview questions they asked me, they're like, but what are the metrics that you're monitoring? And I'm just like stumped. So that so vividly replays in my mind. So I think it's one of those, like, give yourself grace. But I think after going through this process, like now that you know that data is so critical in the examples, just make sure that you're taking the time to prepare and see if there's maybe examples that don't have that really kind of like so what factor of like, why am I even bringing this up as an example? That may not be the best example to surface in the interview. So that's probably what, if I were to go back, a decade, that would be the best coaching I would give myself.
And we have a question here from, thank you, Steph, from Christina Carter, if you wanted to come on with your question.
So as a non-traditional recent college graduate, I'm changing careers, now have a software engineering degree, but I'm finding entry-level jobs at most companies requiring up to 5 years of experience. How do you get experience straight out of college, and as a already working professional can't just stop and volunteer time to get hands-on?
Yeah, so majority of the job, depending on the, I know, like right now in the current industry, many of the companies are looking for 5+ years of experience. That's true, depending on the job and all the stuff. But as a college grad, I did not study here completely. Like I did not join Amazon right out of college, but there are like a lot of college recruiting happening. Like Amazon does go to campus, and like Amazon, multiple other companies do go to campus, right? Like there are where we hire through campus. We without experience. We hire a lot of college grads. So like that, there are multiple companies. My suggestion for you is try to look into those companies which comes to college campus for hiring, and try to get to fit in there. But that will be a best way to get through the experience. If you're unable to make that out in the college campus, when the companies come there, the other thing is there are a lot of companies where you can volunteer for coding as well, and also there are a lot of startup companies looking for people who are just out of college. So that's my suggestion. But I know Amazon does go to multiple colleges for the campus interviews and campus selection, and we do have a separate team who does hire like college grads. In my team right now, I have 8 college grads joining in my team. So we do take college grads as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I believe that was our last question here. So I just want to say thank you to the Amazon team for bringing us this very valuable knowledge. I'm not sure about you guys, but I learned a lot of really great tips on just resume building and LinkedIn that I never had actually learned about, especially that hidden keyword in your resume, and that one's still sticking with me. So just some last few thoughts here. Just a reminder that we do have a giveaway today. So thank you everyone for your participation and engagement. We are going to announce winners at a later date, sending an email out on who won these t-shirts right here that I'm wearing today. Also, we do have a survey that was sent out to you. It should be in your inbox, and we'd love for you guys to give us some feedback on today's session and just anything that you would like to learn in the future. We will be giving, Amazon has graciously given us a Kindle, it's an Amazon, I wrote it down because I didn't want to butcher this. It is okay, maybe a Kindle Voyage e-reader. So for any of you that are bookworms or like to read, Amazon has donated an e-reader. So after if you fill out the survey, we'll be selecting somebody from those surveys. And just last bit, again, we have our job board for all of you that want to upload your resumes there. We dropped the link there, and Amazon has said that they have some open positions. Last but not least, if you're not a member, we join you to become a member. Latina Geeks, it is free. We do plan on sending this, writing up a blog and sending this recording out, so that way you guys are aware of when that comes out. And I think that is it. Oh, I already talked about the survey here. So just again, last thing, thank you, Amazon. And I know, Steph, you said that you had an open position that you wanted to drop in. So if you do have that link, I encourage Steph from Amazon to drop in that link on the open position that you're hiring for. But other than that, thank you guys for joining tonight, and we can't wait for our next event. Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much for all the questions and the conversation. Really appreciate you all for spending the time with us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Damien, Steph, and Camila.